Hi folks, welcome to your mwis Friday Planner in association with Ellis Brigham. Now it's quite a complicated forecast through this weekend and beyond, and it's a pretty typical situation at this time of year as the remnants of Atlantic hurricanes get into the mix, and it does just make forecasting more than a few days rather tricky. The basic message is still often a dry story through the next 4 or 5 days. Increasingly humid air though being drawn northwards across Britain, some areas of low cloud. All of this may eventually lead to some heavier bursts of rain in places by the middle of the week. In the short term, we've still got high pressure nearby, and for Saturday at least it's a similar sort of day to what we've been used to, in that it's a sense of pretty extensive banks of low cloud early in the day, focused across more eastern regions. There's still an inversion likely to be in existence across the Highlands, although you might have to go pretty high up to genuinely get out of the fog banks. It will lift and break through the day, and it will feel fairly warm where some sunshine comes through. But in the fog banks, particularly the Pennines and eastern Scotland in the morning, it will be rather cool, only 6 or 7 Celsius on the hills. Now into Sunday, high pressure is centred out to the east of us, and we've got a tangle of fronts located to the west of Ireland. Now that's a slightly different situation to what it even looked a few days ago, and that's no great surprise in this complicated weather pattern we've got at the moment, that things are just changing in how the evolution of the pattern comes out. So basically the risk is of some rain eventually coming on to the western side of Scotland. I'll show you a few more charts of that in a moment. Ahead of that, it's just the story of cloud banks and a rather warm and humid day developing where any sunshine comes through. Need to watch for the wind strengthening across western Scotland as that frontal zone starts to encroach its way in. The timing of that is very uncertain, so keep an eye on your local forecasts for the details into Sunday. I'll just now show you, as last week, the fog chart. This is a visibility map, and this starting Friday evening. I'll show how the fog then really begins to fill in at low elevations as we go onwards into the early hours of Saturday, that lifting up onto the hills in places as well. So all rather a murky start on Saturday morning across many of the hills, but that inversion still giving the scope for some Scottish tops at least to be above that, and maybe some of the highest tops in England and Wales above some of those fog and cloud banks. Now for Saturday morning, a good few hours of murky conditions, but that will start to thin and break. Western regions doing the best soonest, and gradually through the middle of the day, most of that fog starting to break up. Still some banks of cloud may just be around though across England and Wales, but tending to lift above many hills. We'll run the story through Saturday evening and night. Some fog around the North Sea is likely to once again fill in across more eastern regions as we head into the evening and the night. Cloud across some of the hill slopes. Still something of an inversion maybe around, keeping the highest tops just above that. And we start Sunday morning again with some low-level fog and cloud for a good few hours, that thinning and breaking, and then just notice what happens to the west of Scotland as we run onwards through the second half of Sunday. The greener colours here more indicating banks of cloud coming in to the West Highlands. That's by around mid or late afternoon, and that's spilling further inwards across Scotland as we head towards evening time. That is that frontal system that lay out toward the west, and that's just the scope of going downhill for cloud filling in and some rain coming on from the west with time. Quite a lot of high cloud coming in ahead of that front as well. This chart, with all its fancy colours, suggesting the cloud at various levels. The blues on this map indicate sort of higher level cloud, that coming in from the west early on Sunday, and then just as that frontal system comes in off the Atlantic, those cloud layers will lower and thicken as some rain does just move in. So that's thicker, paler blue cloud shown on this map is essentially where a front is likely to be heading into the evening time. That then making things rather overcast and the cloud filling in across the hills through later Sunday across the Highlands. Some warm and humid air is being drawn up from the south on Sunday, so particularly across England and Wales it will feel rather humid, increasingly so as the day goes on. And as we go through into Monday, that warm humid air stays in place across England, Wales and perhaps southern Scotland. Now what I've shown on this map is a weakening frontal system that's left in place as pressure just builds a touch again across the country by this time, but that weak frontal zone is likely to be rather a nuisance into Monday, in that there's some dregs of rain, some low cloud that could just be around for a time. The exact location of the worst of that is up for grabs at this time. The likelihood, though, that west and southern Scotland, maybe some low cloud also into the Lake District, the western side of the Pennines. Locally, the humidity may just trigger the odd heavier burst of rain in places, but many places could still see a generally dry day. But just expect a rather nuisance sort of situation where there is some murkiness and some dampness around. Not too much wind at the northwest of Scotland, a little bit breezier with a southwesterly breeze there. For Tuesday, it still seems as though high pressure is across us, but beware again of that risk of some banks of low cloud and some fog. We may well get back to some inversion conditions in places once more by this stage. Generally, any fronts across the country have dissipated, so some warm, humid, sunny conditions, a bit hazy maybe, not quite the clarity of the air that maybe has been around on the hills in some recent days, with that greater amount of moisture that will be around. Small risk of anything brewing up into a shower. I suspect most places are dry. Tangle of fronts around Biscay again need watching as we head towards the middle of the week, and some fronts well away toward the north shouldn't be having too much influence. It's just going to be a fairly stagnant, humid sort of day. Any sunshine that comes through, and it will feel very warm through the middle of the week. Now, again, confidence of detail is quite low, but we're lowering pressure as we go towards Wednesday from the southwest. That little zone of activity around Biscay drifting towards us, and that energy enough with the warmth and the humidity to spark off some bursts of rain, possibly some thunderstorms in places as this feature drifts northwards. Greatest risk across England and Wales, maybe Scotland at this stage getting away with a dry and warm day. Some fog banks, some low cloud banks, some sunshine around as well. I think that's about as clever as we can get with the detail at this stage, but it does just look as though things break a bit more to become something more unsettled through the middle of the week. Not really going to attempt to get much detail out of things further onwards, apart from to say that it does just seem as though the Atlantic weather patterns drift in with a bit more regularity as we go further onwards into September, next weekend and beyond, as various frontal systems come through. Some warm and humid conditions at times, some cooler, fresher air sometimes coming around from the northwest. And I suspect the further onwards we go, the greater likelihood of some rain and some wind coming in off the Atlantic. Former tropical systems getting into the mix once again. That feature over the mid-Atlantic there is looking like the remnants of a hurricane that's somewhere out over the Atlantic right now. It will take a week or 10 days to properly get into our weather story, but all in all is likely to be a rather unsettled, changeable story as we head towards the middle of the month. Confidence of detail beyond that, though, is very low at this stage. Just expect some wind and rain at times and some better days mixed in too. Keep an eye on your local forecast then every day on the MWis website. That's your planning outlook for today in association with Ellis Brigham. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.